Hello, my Italian food fanatics. Today, we're going to make a farmer or a peasant dish that's famous the world over. Pasta e fagioli. Pasta and beans. Also known in America as pasta fazool. I don't know why. I don't know why they bastardized it like that, but that's what it's known for. But before we go into the kitchen and I show you how to make it, please, a thumbs up, like, subscribe, ring the bell, share, tell your friends, and leave a comment below. This recipe that we're going to make today is a refined method, but still uses old world flavors. For example, and you don't have to use it if you don't want to, we use pork fat or lard, essentially, in the sofrito or the mirepoix, along with a little bit of olive oil. But if you don't want to use that, you can totally just use olive oil as well. So anyway, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the kitchen and I'll show you how to make this. It is delicious. All right, my Italian food fanatics, tomorrow we are going to make pasta e fagioli, otherwise known as pasta fazool. But in order to do that, we have to soak our beans 24 hours in advance. So I have a bag of beans here that I'm going to put out in a sheet tray. And I'm not going to bother you with all of this, but you can see that there are beans in here that look like anomalies. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort the beans out and make sure that anything that's bad, like this one right here, is removed. When that's done, I'll come back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, I've picked through all of these beans that were halves or too dark or what have you, have all been removed. I could still see some anomalies, but this is a natural product, so we can't be too picky. And believe it or not, compared to what you get in the old country, these are already theoretically picked over, even in the bag. So what we get in this country is pretty darn good to begin with. We're going to need to soak these overnight in water, and what we're going to do is we're going to soak them in a brine, in a saltwater brine. What this does is it allows the beans to soak up the water without bursting. Now, even though half of these beans are going to be pureed, the other ones are going to be in our pasta e fagioli, and we want the fagioli to be whole and not burst and stuff like that. So we want to keep these together, and we want them to cook and be creamy on the inside without bursting. And so that's the reason why we're going to brine them and also cook them in a little bit of salt, in salted water tomorrow. So let me get all that stuff ready and I'll come back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we're back with our water. That's a half a gallon, and I've got some salt in there. It is 1.5 tablespoons of salt to create the brine. What I'm going to do is it's slightly warm water, and the reason why is because I want the salt to dissolve inside without too much hassle. We don't want to be here all day long stirring water with salt to try to get it to dissolve. So I'm going to stir this for about 30 seconds and we'll come back and put the beans in. All right, my Italian food fanatics, that about does it with regard to stirring in and dissolving the salt. I will now take our beans and soak them in this water. We're going to add a couple of other items to the beans, and I'll be back with those in just a moment. All right, my Italian food fanatics, along with the brine, we are going to put some sage in this water and some garlic, about 4 or 5 cloves of it. Just going to submerge that in there. Now, you may not think that this is going to have that much of an effect, but it will. It always does, because we're going to cook them with the garlic and the sage tomorrow as well. So we're going to get these cloves in there, and then this will go into the refrigerator and we will pull it out tomorrow. So instead of boring you with doing all of this, we'll be back tomorrow. All right, my Italian food fanatics, this is the second day of our pasta fazool. So what we're going to do is we're going to strain out the water, and we're going to add new water to cover the beans, and we're going to put the beans on the fire to cook. We'll be back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we're back. I've strained some of the beans. Let me strain the rest of them. And then we're going to cover this with some water. And the reason why I have them in this type of a pan is because it's going to cook the beans more evenly like this. In fact, we're going to cover this with water. We're going to bring it to the boil, and I'm going to put it in a 350-degree oven for about 45 minutes. Because we brined the beans, this process will save us about another 45 minutes to an hour, if not longer, in cooking. So let's cover these. We're going to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of olive oil, and we'll bring this to the boil. Be back in a moment. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we are back. I'm going to add a little bit of salt into this, a drizzle of our extra virgin California 100% California olive oil, and we'll bring this to a boil. After that, we'll put it in the oven like I said earlier, but that's the way it should look. All right, my Italian food fanatics, as our beans come to the boil, we are going to make a sofrito, or what's also known as mirepoix. Very simple. Onions, celery, and carrots. So I'll wash these. I'm going to peel the carrots and the onions, of course, and then chop them into small dice for soup. I'll be back when that's done. All right, my Italian food fanatics, sometimes when dealing with vegetables in a professional kitchen, we would slice them like this without breaking them up at all. And that can be kind of daunting for some people. So what I suggest that you do is to cut the vegetable in half like this, and then slice smaller sticks like this to make it more manageable. Okay, and then you can also work on your knife skills as well. So you would take these then and line them up and then cut. All right? That way you make more, even though it might take a little bit longer, it's more efficient essentially for you. It makes it easier, you're less apt to make mistakes, and you're not going to cut yourself, all right? Rather than doing what I'm going to do here and just chop up the whole thing, all right? It has a tendency to get out of hand, and you can be more accurate with your cuts when it's a smaller amount, all right? There you go. A little bit of celery. All right, and the same thing applies here with the carrots. I'll get to those in just a second. All right, my Italian food fanatics, these beans have come up to a simmer. I'm now going to skim them of all of these impurities that we find. All right, the scum and stuff like that. Because we don't want that in our soup, believe it or not. We don't want to be ingesting that. I will do that, and then we'll put these beans in the oven, and we'll see them in about 45 minutes. All right, my Italian food fanatics, the same rules apply when it comes to the carrots. I'm going to peel them. I don't like eating food that the carrots are not peeled. I don't know why. I remember going to somebody's house, and I would see that in the stew that they had, that the carrots still had, hairs and things like that coming off of them. And I realized that person's never peeled the carrots. I couldn't believe it. I've never, ever had carrots that haven't been peeled in any restaurant or dining room or what have you. I just see it as uncouth, essentially. Now, these peels will go into a stock, all right? That's what you would do to utilize these in a restaurant if they're concerned with waste. But in the home kitchen, for the most part, unless you freeze this stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people on YouTube tell you what they're going to do with them, and then what they really do with them is something completely different. Oh, yeah, and I'm going to use these later to do this and that. And you think, if I tell you I'm going to do it, I do. But what I will do with these are going in the bin. These are going to go in the trash because I'm not making stock. I've already made some stock, and I don't really need them. So that's the truth because I use so many carrots. Anyway, we're going to square these off. Let me clean this up, and I'll be right back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we're back. So the same thing applies to the carrots as does the celery. If we were to take these and just start cutting, even in a professional setting, this can be somewhat dangerous. So what I suggest that you do is cut the carrot in half, cut one side of it off to make a flat surface, then cut here like this, then cut them into matchsticks like that, all right? And then, when it's more manageable, cut them into squares. All right? That way you won't cut yourself, and you can be very accurate with your cuts. Look how beautiful these are. Gorgeous. Okay, I'm going to do the rest of the carrots, and I'll be back to show you what to do with the onions. All right, my friends, we are back with the onions. You top and tail them like this. Cut them down the center. This is my own way of doing it. I haven't really seen anybody else do anything like this. We're going to remove the top layer. Okay. Now, instead of cutting them this way, or going like this, and then going like this, and then going like this, we're going to cut them like this in the half rings first. All right, now we're going to take, just for the sake of showing you how to do it, some of the carrots are still here. It doesn't matter because they're all going to go in the same pot anyway. We are going to cut now from this side. So now what we're doing was we're eliminating one cut, and we're being more thorough this way. Okay? Now, if you wanted to actually make them exactly into squares, you'll have to come at an angle here and turn along with it, which I already do, but it's not necessary that the onions be exactly squared. All right? And the reason for that is just because they're going to break down in the soup to begin with. And so consequently, it's not really that necessary. You want to kind of go slow. You don't want to go as fast as I'm going by virtue of the fact that you are going to cut yourself. And so this is a farmer's, a very rustic sort of a soup. So it's not really necessary that we make these fine cuts. But in the event that you want to, this is a perfect way to practice cutting up your different vegetables for the time when it really is essential. When you're going to make something really super fine, you'll be able to do it. You'll have the practice, all right? So just because you can just chop these and do it doesn't mean that you should. You should always practice your knife skills. So there you go. How to cut up some onions and some celery and carrots. We'll be back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, for the next portion of our pasta I fagioli, we're going to use some sage. We need rosemary, a few cloves of garlic, some hot peppers, believe it or not, and also pork fat, okay, or lard. Now this is, a lot of people don't want to use this, and you don't have to, but this is the traditional way that it's done, and so that's what I'm going to use. This is pork fat called manteca. Farmer John sells it. I don't know where else to get it. You can go to a Mexican supermarket if there's one in your area, and they will also have it. They will probably render it fresh themselves, okay? And we're going to use a little bit of olive oil to mix in as well. I'm not going to use a lot of this. Okay, so let's go to the stove and start making the sofrito, or the base for our pasta I fagioli. All right, my Italian food fanatics. The pot is on the fire. We're going to add in our lard and a little bit of olive oil. Now, there are many, many, many ways to make this particular dish. This is just one of the many ways. And each family and each region has its own method of making this. So no way is theoretically right or wrong. But I'm sure if you talk to an Italian, he will tell you that I'm completely wrong, and that there's only one way to do it, and that was the way that his mother did it, or his grandmother did it, or whatever. And you know what I say to all of that. Hogwash. This is a farmer's dish. It's a poor person's dish, that they used up a lot of the scraps and beans and pasta, because the beans have protein and fiber. It makes a complete meal. So we're going to add some of these onions into here. And mix them up. We're going to sweat these until they become a little bit translucent. And then we're going to add our celery and carrots, and I'll be back for that. Okay, my Italian food fanatics, we're back. Now we're going to add in our carrots and celery. The onion needs to cook first a little bit before we add in these accoutrements, before we add in the rest of the mirepoix. And so this is going to do the same thing that we did with the onions, so I won't bore you with that. But look how beautiful that is. Look how nice those cuts are that we made, especially with the carrots, the way they look in there. That's going to come to help us in the future. And I'm also going to add a little bit of salt into here, just regular table salt, nothing special, okay? No rock salt, no Persian blue salt, no kosher salt, no unkosher salt, none of that. And we'll continue to mix, and I'll be back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, what I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to add some of these red peppers in here. I'm just going to break them like that, because we are going to remove them after a little while, okay? And it's the same thing with our garlic and also our rosemary and sage. I'm actually going to take these out in a little while. It's going to be too much. We're going to put them just in there to have a little bit of flavor and to lend their aromatics to the dish itself. And in a true Italian fashion, remove them so that at the end there's a hint of all of these flavors rather than a barrage. We'll be back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we've been at this for a few minutes now, And our beans are going to be ready in about 10 minutes. But you can see that the sofrito, or the mirepoix, has softened, and the herbs are really well cooked in there. So is the garlic and the hot peppers. And now I'm going to turn the heat off, and I'm going to remove these, and we're going to wait for the beans to be done. All right? Be back in a second. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we are off heat. And now let's take these things out of here. We're just going to take the stalks. If there's any little bits of rosemary and sage and what have you that remain, that's okay. That's not really that big of a deal. These hot peppers, though, they've got to be taken out, because if you bite into that, that's going to be a surprise that some people are not going to find too amusing. So the garlic has to come out too. You don't want to be biting into those pieces of garlic. Anyway, so you get the idea. I'll be back when this is done. All right, my Italian food fanatics. These are the beans as they've come out of the oven. Now you can take a look and see that literally every single bean is intact. There's no bursting of the beans, and that's because of what we did. We added salt and brined them before, and then we cooked them inside of the oven very, very gently. And believe it or not, these are perfectly creamy on the inside. And they have a wonderful flavor too. You can taste the sage, you can taste the garlic. This garlic and sage is going to be removed, but that water in there, that's gold. All right? We're going to use that, and we're also going to supplement it with a little bit of chicken stock to give us the viscosity of the soup that we want, the pasta I fagioli. All right, so more in a minute. Now you know how to cook beans. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we're back. And now we're going to take some of the beans, about half, and put them in the blender. And we are going to puree them, along with some of the water that they were cooked in. Let me load this up, and we'll be back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we are loaded up. And we'll start this off on a very small, low flame or low setting. And that should really be enough to nicely puree our beans. I mean, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. And that's all that it takes. All right? So you can see that there's some beans in there that are, maybe half pureed. But that's okay. This is a farmer's dish. It's supposed to be very rustic, essentially. But for those of you that are purists, we'll give it a really, really good puree. And then we're going to add it into our soup. All right, we'll be back to do that in a minute. All right, my Italian food fanatics. I'm going to put the heat back underneath this pot. I'm going to bring it back to a simmer. And in the meantime, we're going to add a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste. In fact, I'm going to use the rest of this tube. This is the only way to buy tomato paste, unless you know that you're going to use the entire can, because this ensures that you only use what you need and that you don't waste, essentially. There we go. So now we'll cook that down for about 2 minutes when this comes back up to temperature. And then we're going to add our bean puree and our beans, and we'll come back. And then, of course, we're going to add our pasta as well. After all, it is pasta e fagioli. We'll be back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we've added our tomato paste, and now we are going to add our beans and the bean broth. All right. That's one addition. This is a second addition of some of these beans. Those are the whole beans. And now for our pureed beans with our cooking water. They go into the mix. Okay. Sorry about that with the camera. It's inevitable because we are in movement, in motion here. And what we're going to also do now is adjust the consistency for it to be slightly less thick. Now, why is that? Because we're going to add pasta into this, and it's going to thicken it up some more, because the starch from the pasta is going to thicken up whatever we have. But that's a nice consistency right there. All right? We'll be right back when we're going to add some more. This time I'm going to add chicken stock. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we're back. I've added some chicken stock to give it a little bit less viscosity. Now, this may not look good right now, but once it comes to a simmer and we add the pasta to it and the pasta cooks, everything will come to be proper. It'll gain a little bit of viscosity because the starches from the pasta will go into the water. Here's the type of pasta I've chosen. They're little wheels. Now, this is in paying homage to the farmers, from where this humble dish has its origins. And these little wheels represent the wheels on the horse carts and the carriages and stuff like that from days of old. So I think in terms of this, not only to pay homage to where it came from, but also to modernize it a little bit like we have. So that's the reason for using these little wheels. All right, my Italian food fanatics, the time has come. The soup is now at a simmer. We're going to add our pasta in. And we're going to let that cook for about 8 to 10 minutes. And then our soup will be done. And I'll be back when that's done. All right, my Italian food fanatics. Our pasta e fagioli is done. You notice how it was very, very loose before. You can roll back the video and see. But now it has come to the exact consistency that we're looking for in this particular soup, because of the addition of the pasta, like I mentioned. All right? I have added a little bit of black pepper, and I've adjusted it with salt, so it's literally perfect. And now, let's plate it up and taste. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we are at the moment of truth. You saw me put it together. You saw me make the soup. You saw everything. And you saw my reasoning for using that particular type of pasta. Those little wheels, all right, that represent the farmer's cart, the wheels on the farmer's cart. When I saw that pasta, I said, that's it. That's what we have to use. I didn't want to use a larger pasta or elbows or anything like that because I wanted it to be about the same size as the beans. And they are. They're just about the same size as the beans once they soak up that moisture and expand, because pasta expands probably about 70%, believe it or not. And I didn't want to use a really super high-end pasta because you're not really tasting pasta. It goes in here, it gets hydrated, and ultimately, to be honest, it overcooks. All right? Now, I've also showed you how to make the beans. This is an important one because no matter what culture you go to, inevitably you're going to find beans. And if you learn how to brine them and then mix them in the brine with the flavors of whatever it is you're going to cook the next day, those flavors will come through not only in the water, but in the actual beans themselves. So here we go. Let's just taste this. You know, I got some of that olive oil when I did the final benediction. And it's 100% California extra virgin olive oil. And I love it. And this is a perfect soup. A little bit hot still. The beans are perfectly cooked. I mean, and they stayed intact. And they were creamy, as you saw, which is the result of proper brining and then gentle cooking in the oven. So you have to go through a little bit of trouble and put a little bit of salt in the water to brine the beans. But at the end of the day, that 3 minutes that you take to do that saves you 45 minutes or more on the other end. But more importantly, it keeps the beans intact. Now, I can taste all the flavors in here, including the garlic, which we removed. There's some heat. There's rosemary. There's sage in there. Remember, rosemary and sage go together. A lot of recipes for pasta fazool, or pasta fagioli, have you using basil and then Parmesan cheese and stuff like that. The original pasta I fagioli is only going to use water from boiling the beans and not chicken stock, all right? And it's definitely not going to use cheese. And the reason for this is because it's a peasant dish. Cheese is extremely expensive. If farmers made cheese, they may have used it, but more likely what they do is they sell the cheese so they can buy other products, right? Now, the other thing too is they would never use chicken stock. And the reason for that is because when you have a chicken, the chicken lays the egg. You're going to eat eggs and omelets and frittatas all day long and egg dishes and use that. But if you kill the chicken, you only eat once. If you have a chicken and keep it alive, you eat forever. All right? That's the key. So, please, like, subscribe, ring the bell, share, leave a comment, tell your friends, because I love to do this for you. It's fantastic. I don't like eating in front of you, believe it or not, but I have to be completely honest with you. When I say it tastes good, it tastes really, really good. And this is no exception. This is one of those hearty dishes that in early spring is going to be just perfect. You're going to love it. I guarantee it. Make it for your friends, your family, and your loved ones, and you will not be sorry. Thank you very much for your time and attention and your eyeballs. Have a wonderful rest of the night, day, week, weekend, whatever it happens to be. Thank you, and I'll see you very, very soon.